Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers as well. Tonight, we'll have an open live stream with some Q&A participation from the community, where I will be answering your questions and taking some participation from the chat as well. As we go through with the latest updates, I'm going to have a separate video for you either later this evening or perhaps tomorrow during the daytime with some relevant information in regards to what happened in the past 48 hours. Let's begin with what happened slightly. I'll give you a short update here before we open the space up for the community. And again, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. So, the entity of terror and havoc and destruction, they breached the ceasefire yet again yesterday. They killed over 104 Palestinian people. As a matter of fact, the numbers keep rising. 109, according to a recent confirmation, including 52 children and 23 women. That's in the past 12 hours. That was published several hours back. However, over 100, and every life is, of course, a valued life. It's talking about a human being. Over 240 people were wounded, over 78 of which being children. You're talking about an infanticidal entity here. Why? Why are they doing that? And how are they getting away with it? Yesterday, I told you about the fact that they're using these attacks in the Rafah area as an excuse. Number one, the attacks are Israeli attacks. They're doing stuff to themselves. The attacks in Rafah are in areas where the Zionist terrorists are present at. The Palestinian resistance is in control now of all of the area within the yellow line, what's called the yellow line. Now Israel's threatening to crunch in the yellow line too. But there's another reason why they did that in Rafah yesterday. It's because they don't want to open the Rafah crossing. You see, Israel has been delaying the opening of the Rafah crossing, although the agreement states clearly they need to open it. And what better excuse can they find than, oh, we're being attacked in Rafah and we need to respond by maiming infants and killing children. Children, literally. If you go to my X account, you'll see all of the images that came out from Gaza in the past 24 hours. Horrific. Absolutely horrific. And you know what's more horrific too? The garbage mainstream media. The garbage mainstream media, these despicable individuals who constantly cover up for the Zionists. Unbelievable. I despise every single one of them. Corporate media covering up for the Zionists. And some of them are saying, oh, Israel attacked Gaza after Hamas made a breach. You lying hypocrite. You lying hypocrite. These people have blood on their hands. Do you know why? Because they're justifying the blood of the Palestinian people. It starts up here. It starts up with the brainwashing. And that's why these deranged beasts are acquiring more social media outlets. That's why they're suppressing free speech. That's why they're on a rampage to take down every single thing, every comment. Don't be surprised tomorrow if every comment that says something will be removed. As in, we already live in dystopian ages. Don't think that we have a bit of a freedom to talk here, that everything is all wonderful. That's the basic minimum. Everyone needs to have the right to say whatever they want to say. That's called freedom of speech. No one has the right to suppress freedom of speech under any excuse, let alone the same culprits and murderers who are butchering Palestinians, trying to censor the people simply exposing the truth by labeling you and telling you and the typical garbage that they spew 24/7. Where are you, you deranged, depraved hypocrites, from the killing of 52 children? Where are you? Where are they? What are they talking about? And then you will hear the BBC telling you Hamas Health Ministry says 104 killed. Hamas Health Ministry. Hamas Health Ministry. They're still repeating the same venom that they have spewing from day one, which puts more responsibility on us. To continue, they were saying, oh, we killed members of Al-Qassam brigades. We killed members of Al-Qassam and we killed this and that. And now they want to even ban the Palestinian resistance from accompanying the Red Cross to find their own buried terrorists in Gaza. The buried Israeli terrorists in Gaza that Israel killed. They want to ban the Palestinian side from going with the Red Cross to see how are they going to find them. What, does the Red Cross have access to the tunnel network in Gaza? They want to continuously cause problems. Continuously cause problems. And then what kind of a ceasefire is this? Donald Trump was saying peace. This was a peace deal, and then we had some of the Arab mediators telling us that, you know, it's going to be a better deal now, and that's it. Okay. Well, where are you now? Qatar is showing concern. We haven't heard anything, at least I didn't hear, from Egypt and Turkey. Your mediators. What are we supposed to accept the fact that Hamas or that Israel killed people on a day-to-day basis in Gaza as if it's a given? Are we going to accept that fact? What, do the people don't count? Over 104 people? These were the numbers that, look at the numbers here, 109. Okay. It could be something to do with the Israeli delay, by the way, of the entry of phase 2. The Qatari Prime Minister said that as soon as the ISF goes in, the International Stabilization Force goes in, Israel must withdraw from all of the areas. But Israel knows that it's going to need to have some sort of compromises. However, and thank you everyone participating in the chat. I'll get to the section shortly to open the space for some Q&A. And thank you for everyone sending supers as well. He said that they need to withdraw. Benjamin Netanyahu is clearly delaying the implementation of that because he knows he's going to have to withdraw to certain locations. And from their perspective, they're expecting this international civilization force to act as a proxy for them when the reality is very far from that. Even as confirmed by the Palestinian resistance too. As a matter of fact, now they had a consensus. The main Palestinian resistance movements, the occupation, the Israelis and Washington are responsible for violating the agreement. And again, the United States is covering up. The Trump administration is covering up for Israel. So this blood that was spilled in Gaza, the hands in Washington as well. Don't forget that. So Netanyahu then later on said, oh, 10 a.m., that's it. That's it. The ceasefire is back. They want to create a reality where they come and satisfy their genocidal and infanticidal need by seeing blood of Palestinian children. This is how the Jewish state lives and survives, the so-called Jewish state, the Zionist entity. They live and thrive on the blood of Palestinian children. Probably some ritual sacrifice too, I wouldn't be surprised, apart from their typical deranged behavior. But, they always tell us, oh, look, it's the responsibility of the Palestinians. It's the Palestinians' responsibility that this genocide happened. And we have some twisted voices online and in the media, encouraging such talks by, on the sly criticizing, the Palestinian resistance, or saying, yeah, well, look what they did. They attracted all of this destruction. Again, either directly or indirectly, if we want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I personally don't. Serving the Zionist mouthpieces, legitimizing the genocide and blaming the resistance for what happens. But guess what? The Palestinian people, they don't share the same view. Tough luck. As a matter of fact, there was a recent poll that said the majority of the Palestinians reject disarming the resistance. Over 70% said that we strongly reject disarming the resistance, even if it means the cost of returning to the war. These are the people who you're dealing with. Not some of these twisted voices online that tell you this and that and pretend to be caring, on the basis of, the humanitarian thing and what have you. When really and truly they are only justifying the continuation of this genocidal terror machine of Israel. What do the Palestinian people like wars or stuff? Do you think that if, for example, the rights of the Palestinian people have been granted, they would choose this path? No. As a matter of fact, some of the resistance movements told you, no, we actually prefer to get them without the need to fight. But we're dealing with an enemy that always attacks us, even if we're doing nothing. Go look at the West Bank every single day and what they do. Again, I post daily on X what they do on the West Bank. Going, bothering people, killing people, shooting people, beating them unconscious, taking them, kidnapping them from the streets, beating people in the olive season, the harvesting season. What is that? And these people are not armed. They're not doing anything. So in essence, what we have here is an antidote. It's the immune system working against a virus. If I may, some of you will object. Some of you will say they're worse than a virus. You can share the names. But that's what it is. It's an antidote. However, they're trying to always shift, like blame shifting, Blame shifting. No, it's your fault that we're beating you and killing you. We're going to commit a genocide and it's your fault. Like one of their, it was quoted on one of their previous prime ministers, the only female one at the time, who coincidentally said she was Palestinian too, Golda Meir. We will never forgive the Palestinians for forcing us to kill their children. That's their ideology. That's their reasoning. That's what we're dealing with here. So it's clear. I mean, if you go and ask the people, it's clear. Yeah, there are a couple of voices online who may say otherwise. There are a couple of backed by who channels that spew venom against the Palestinian resistance, in effect whitewashing all of the Israeli crimes. But the Palestinian people have spoken. And guess what? It's going to continue that way. There's no going back. From the ground invasion perspective, Israel tried whatever it can to, seize territories. And what did they do? Kill innocent civilians. But the armed resistance in Gaza, it's not going to happen. They didn't do anything. That's why they resorted to destroying buildings. Eventually, before the last ceasefire came to effect. Well, the so-called ceasefire, the low-heat genocide, the slow-mo genocide, that's what's happening now. And listen, there could be a path, and Netanyahu could be doing this. Of course, the Israelis, they want to depress the Palestinian people and the whole world. And they want to instill defeat in the Palestinian people and tell them that's your reality from now moving on. Even if there is a ceasefire, we can every few days go and kill like 100 people or 40 or 50 people and what have you, and accept that reality, so that they can also not let the Palestinians even recover. I mean, without the bombings, the Gaza population is suffering, like sleeping in the streets, 2 years of bombardment and this depravity of Israel in Gaza. That on its own is a problem. Only 10% of the medical requirements are going in. That's not a reality to live in. Reality, you want to live in a home. Don't want to live in the streets or in tents and whatever. That's going to take time. But they don't even want to let them recover from that. However, again, from a long-term perspective, or even in the medium term, so long as Netanyahu, the war criminal, and his genocidal satanic entity didn't completely break all of the tools, that means there would still be prospect of certain solutions being implemented on the ground. And that has to do with multiple developments, not only what's called the ceasefire agreement, but the reality on the ground, Israel's incapability, their military defeat, their lack of readiness militarily, and the unwillingness of the Israeli public to also go and participate. Let's not forget that. And they failed to also recruit people to make up the numbers that they need. That's on the updates front. We'll open the space up for the community for some questions. And again, everyone, welcome. And thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. Like I said before, I will have another video too, either this evening or tomorrow at one point, with some important information as well. Let's go through the chat and take some of your questions as well. Michael and Marvin, thank you for your super, and also Lavatar, thank you as well, much appreciated. Marvin, what did you say, Marvin? Marvin said that I think if True Promise Unleashed, that could end Greater Israel Project, stop Gaza, up West Bank, who will fill the void, US, Egypt, Turkey. I think this Greater Israel illusion is dead. I mean, we're told that their days are numbered as an entity anyway. But they're trying to project a different reality, a reality of strength, the illusion, just like they created the illusion of their existence through pseudo-history and propaganda and manipulation. This is how they live. They don't live in anything solid. Lift American support for Israel, Israel will be gone with the wind the day after tomorrow. So there is no Greater Israel. There is the smaller Israel now. Now, how smaller is it going to be? Is it going to be small to a level where that's it, Zionism is dismantled, or small to a level where there is a temporary Palestinian entity next to them for several years before more developments happen in the future? Because Zionism is unlivable with. Zionism as an ideology must be completely dismantled and viewed as exactly what it is, an ideology of murder and massacres and slaughter and terrorism and hate. But Iran, I think Iran are watching, keeping a close eye. They're prepared very, very well. They're not trusting any of this positivity. They view the battle with Israel as a long-term battle that is not necessarily won by a knockout, but rather by points. So from their perspective, they're ready, and they're going to continue to be ready, by the way. And they have done several things in the past several months, not only reaching the level that they were in before the 12-day war with Israel, but exceeding it. And we saw some interesting participation this time from China and also from Russia too, with more advanced systems being deployed. reports of over 100 fighter jets going from Russia to Iran, alongside the Chinese deal that would bring them probably a 10 to 15 more, but they wanted a bulk. Clearly, they're preparing for something very big. However, again, that's not necessarily to say that it's going to be imminent. There is likelihood that it could be imminent because Iran's adversaries are viewing this accomplishment that Iran is doing, how they recovered as well from their air defenses too. And they know the more time they give them, the more they become more powerful. But we need to understand that on the other side, Israel is suffering too. Israel was completely exhausting its arsenal, especially of air defenses. How much did they use? A quarter of the US THAADs across the world, something like that. The US doesn't have production capability to recover. The Iron Dome or Iron Damned and all of their other slings and stuff, they were ineffective in the face of the mighty Iranian missiles that landed on the genocidal entity, the child-killing entity. So they know what they're going to get, by the way. And that's where you see where the power of Iran managed to deter something bigger than that. Had Iran not been able to hurt Israel hard, Israel would have potentially continued. But then they went and asked the Americans for a rope. It was granted to them with all love by Donald Trump, who came up with this theatrical move. And Iran is where it is now, a nuclear power, hypersonic power, a ballistic power, and they're going to continue to be like that. And that was from Marvin. Thank you so much for that. And again, welcome everyone. Gullyburg Mahmoud, I heard that there was once a Christian Palestinian resistance group that kind of disappeared. Is it true? Well, the Palestinian National Liberation Movement always consisted of Christians and Muslims. As a matter of fact, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine was formed by a Palestinian Christian named George Habash, who was a native of the Lid area, if I'm not mistaken. His family was expelled from there in 1948. He formed the PFLP, leftist socialist resistance movement that believes in a one-state solution, albeit a secular one. And of course, the majority of the participants were Muslims because of the demographics of Palestine. However, that's a completely normal thing. So that always exists. I even spoke about the Samaritan. The Samaritan who was in the PFLP, funny enough, who was recently released. Nader Sadaqa, I posted a video about him. He was actually a leader in the PFLP after the second Intifada, proving again that this stretches beyond the deception of this entity that calls itself a Jewish state. Still doesn't prevent it from doing harm to the name of Judaism, of course. But yeah, it shows you that this is a humanitarian cause. However, an exclusive one, no. I mean, Hamas isn't even just exclusive. So, or the PIJ, if any other, if someone from another religion wanted to join them, they could potentially join them. It's not like they're closed or anything. And now, the Palestinian resistance is everywhere. It's in America, it's in Europe, it's in Africa, it's in Asia. Now we have a global resistance movement formed out of every honorable, free-thinking, free-spirited individual on earth, regardless of what they believe in. That's the resistance today. Whether they like it or not, whether they try and hide this fact or not, that's what we have now. And it's stretching beyond the boundaries of Palestine. Now we're talking about a global movement that has Jewish people, Muslim people, Christians, atheists, people from all walks of life and they are focused on one thing: dismantling Zionism. And I don't believe that this movement is going to stop whatsoever up until that dismantling is accomplished. And thank you, my friend Gulliberg. Long time I didn't hear from you, by the way. So, TMZBGD. Do you think international forces like the Pakistani military and others in Gaza will deter? Is not real? Perhaps, and we hope so. As a matter of fact, what we demand and what the global population demands is military action by a coalition to go and enforce international law on this genocidal state. That hasn't happened yet. But they could deter them, and that's why they're worried about the names. However, clearly they don't have the veto on who's in and who's out, because they're trying to portray it now as if they are allowing Pakistan in rather than Turkey, because, you know, what, Pakistan's more friendly? Are you going to convince me that Pakistan's more friendly? Even with whatever you want to say about any of the governments, by the way, are you going to tell me that the Pakistani people are friendly to Israel or the Turkish people? Whatever you may think about the governments, they don't. They're forced to. And again, the International Stabilization Force is going to be a force that is accepted by the Palestinian side. It must be. It's not going to be there doing the dirty work on behalf of the chosen ones of Satan in Gaza. That's not going to happen. Marvin, you said, why doesn't Hamas request Russia, China, Indonesia as mediators? They requested Russia and China. That didn't work, but Russia and China played an important role in the mediation and the meetings between the Palestinian political movements. The Beijing agreement was a very important one. It said that an agreement should be made to form a united government in the West Bank and Gaza, only for the PLO headed by the Palestinian president to withdraw. But now, thankfully, it seems like there's more positivity between both sides. I'm not sure how that formula is going to work exactly. Perhaps after the Palestinian Authority of the West Bank realized that Israel is going after them anyway. Just like some of the Arab countries that didn't lift a finger against Israel realized that we can be hit at any moment. And if that happens, then, well, who's going to protect us? Mimi Goldman, who would want to live next to a psychopathic asshole entity? No one. Who would want to live there? So the solution is to dismantle that ideology and implement a government, an entity that has equal rights between the Jordan River to the sea. Simple. That is the only simple, straightforward, and long-lasting solution. Because a two-state solution that would not necessarily address the case of the Palestinian refugees is going to be limited and fragile, and that's problematic. Like I said, the solution is very, very simple. You simply implement equal rights. That's one democratic entity, one country with equal rights between the Jordan River to the sea, where everyone is granted the same rights. Those who are willing to live in it will do so, and those who aren't and believe they are above people can go and practice their supremacist beliefs on an island near Honolulu or something. So that is like the ideal solution. And unfortunately, not many people are talking about that, and that's also problematic. And I think that should be raised and mentioned and spoken about intensively. I mean, one of the things that we're facing, though, is that, of course, propaganda, you counter propaganda, right? So there must be some sort of propaganda countering here. Again, with the limited resources. But that shouldn't stop the people from also talking about what needs to be done. You can't just be responding or, taking the defense of. They want to put you on your back foot. You need to understand. They want people to be on their back foot. They want everyone who supports equal human rights to be on their back foot as if they're defending some sort of a beast, when really and truly they are the global monster, murdering people left, right, and center. And thank you for that. That was from Mimi Goldman. Mimi Goldman, thank you. Sayyid Salam Mahmoud, did Iran really lose their S-300 batteries when the Zionists attacked them? We can't clarify that. Because in Iran, number one, they did not declare these things. It wouldn't be wise to declare them. Number two, Iran had dummy batteries that were viewed by the Israeli forces as genuine batteries. As a matter of fact, there were videos being published about that in Iran at the time that I shared during the 12-day war, where Israeli terror forces were fighting or targeting dummies, like a dummy truck. It's just covered by, this military shield thing, so that they can pretend like they're batteries. And Iran, with either the S-300 or the Bavar 373, they proved to be very effective. As a matter of fact, their own internal developed one was actually very effective. Of course, it didn't stop all of the Israeli attacks, but because in any, modern warfare between two armies, whether they have similar equipment or arms or not, you will see pros and cons here and there. So even if you put the best air defenses against the best fighter jets, that's not necessarily going to be a one-sided game. They're always going to try and counter one way or another, use different techniques, attack supporting radars initially, for example, or the people on the ground will try and use a different type of radar initially before exposing the real one to have better chances of attacking. All of these things. So it's a very complicated matter. But what's for sure is Iran was capable of thwarting many of the attacks that Israel conducted, but Israel still did have targets that they attacked in Iran, whether it was in the form of figures in the army or certain targets on the ground. But again, it was a huge failure altogether. Let's not forget Israel's ambition, as a matter of fact, with the United States at the time, was to take down the supreme leader and the establishment in Iran and get rid of their nuclear program altogether and get rid of their ballistic missiles altogether. Did that work? That didn't work. That did not work. So, and now, by the way, they are arming themselves, multiple reports, with more advanced air defense systems and also with fighter jets too. And again, welcome everyone. Let's go to your next one. Marvin, Abbas is doing what now? He appears to be useless. I'll tell you what he's doing. He is preparing a successor for the sinking PLO Titanic. And he said that he's going to have a successor. He's going to have Hussein al-Sheikh. His name is one of his top figures. And he's going to remain there for a year, and then there has to be elections. After that, for a period of no longer than 90 days, they need to elect someone. Then again, when he comes to power, you'll have another dictator leading the authority, unless that is they're actually genuine in their reconciliation attempts now, and actually trying to reach something, and actually respecting the level of, or at least recognizing the level of suffering of the Palestinian people. And listen, there have been some positive statements about the developments and the talks that are happening in Cairo. But let's see, it's early days now, by the way. However, there is a prospect of something happening. TMZBGD, would the international forces bring military equipment to defend their forces? Yes, but that's going to be, of course, limited and agreed upon by multiple parties. Of course, the Israelis don't want it to be viewed, or don't want to have forces that would have certain equipment that would be viewed as a counter to attack Israel, but they would definitely have to have something to protect themselves with. But no, I don't believe it's going to be to a level where they can like start a full-scale war or something with Israel. I don't think that's going to be the case. However, the fact that Israel is worried about the names, about the countries, about who's going to participate, shows you that, well, something is happening there. Like they were worried about entering the ceasefire, regardless of all of its flaws, and withdrawing from certain locations where they had to sacrifice so many of their terrorists to get there. And look what they've done now. They withdrew. So clearly there's something happening there, and it's not necessarily going to be in the favor of Israel. But the definition, the tasks, all of these things remain not totally clear, and that's deliberate. That's deliberate for various reasons. The Israeli side is still keen on certain conditions, and the Palestinian side had very clear conditions of them playing a very temporary role, timed, because the Palestinian side said, well, what's the time frame? You're not going to be here forever. You're coming to do a job and get out, whether you're coming from any country all across the world. And they're not going to be able to disarm the Palestinians. They're going to have limited authority. And I'm assuming, well, there are very many indications that this is one of the things that are being spoken about now during the talks of entering phase 2, because the Qatari prime minister, when he was criticizing what Israel has done in the past 24 hours, said we need to get this international force in. When the international force is in, Israel needs to withdraw from all of Gaza. So this is the next step that will kick Israel out of the Gaza Strip. Ed Shihadi, what do you think it would take to get rid of the settlers in the West Bank? Well, the settlers in the West Bank is a much more complicated case than, for example, when the settlers were in Gaza and Israel took them out because of a unilateral decision. There were like approximately 8,000 to 9,000. Now you're talking about 900,000 in the West Bank, support by the government, mostly coming from the United States, mostly criminals, many with other problems too. And if there would be a solution where there would be a Palestinian state where the Palestinian side would demand control and territory all across the area, they would be left with a choice: either remain there with a Palestinian citizenship or go back to Israel. Some of the actual solutions proposed, and even with Israeli attempts too, is that even if there would be a Palestinian state or a Palestinian authority on the West Bank in Gaza, that these settlements, at least the big ones like Ma'ale Adumim, for example, would still belong to Israel with direct access to Israel. It's a very, very complicated thing. That's why the most straightforward thing is to have a one-state solution. But if there were genuine political progresses happening on the ground, they would have to remove some of them from certain locations. And that has happened before. However, it didn't happen on a scale of 900,000. Do you know what I mean? 900,000 people, that's going to cause a civil war in Israel. It's going to cause huge problems. And that's why they tried to annex, because their project is ethnic cleansing. That's a state and national project of Israel, ethnic cleansing. They wanted to go to the West Bank after Gaza. They want to expel every Palestinian, because the Palestinians between the Jordan River to the sea have been a majority since approximately 2015. Israel is very aware of that. That's why they try to ethnically cleanse the people in Gaza. And the fact that they haven't ethnically cleansed the people of Gaza, despite all of the destruction, is a huge failure for the Zionist project. The Zionist project is based on expelling the Palestinians and having a Jewish majority between the Jordan River to the sea. That no longer exists. And it hasn't existed for the past decade, by the way, but they won't tell you that. Not statistically, nor with anything. So, let alone now, of course, many Israelis fleeing the country for good. They lost faith and hope in that country. So it's a complicated matter. And that's why the most straightforward case and solution would be a one-state solution, where you would have equal rights between the Jordan River to the sea, and anyone willing to live in that country would remain there, and anyone who doesn't and they want to practice supremacy, like I said, they can go and practice it on an island near Honolulu or maybe somewhere else. No, I was in no offense to anyone from Honolulu, by the way, because they might not want them there. But I'm talking about a separate island, as in, you know, protected, somewhere remote. Was sending the Pakistani forces, the U.S. thing, even the playing field and their version of covert operations or not, and why? Well, any force that would go into Gaza wouldn't only be an American thing, it would be a joint thing. There needs to be an acceptance from the Palestinian side too. Israel would have a level of involvement as well, and to be based on the relationship that that country or that leadership of that country has, both with the Palestinian side and with the American side, more so than they do with the Israeli side, by the way, because we saw clearly Pakistan has no relations with Israel. The Turkish side has frictions with Israel, and even though they officially had and still do have levels of communications between the two parties, Israel didn't want them. So it's a complicated matter. And again, covert or no covert, that would have to be sorted by the definition of the task force and what it does and how long it will remain there for. And that's where, again, things get tricky, because the initial agreement that was signed by Pakistan and the Arab and Muslim countries did not include certain things to disarm the Palestinians. This, as a matter of fact, spoke about a Palestinian state. So that completely contradicts what the Israelis said, that they wanted to disarm the Palestinian side and, in effect, have a proxy force in a way in Gaza. And that isn't likely to happen. And that's why we're still seeing these delays up until the entry of phase 2. Marvin, have you heard any of the Palestinian released prisoners of war speaking out against Israel? All of them did. As a matter of fact, some of them, when they were getting out of prison, Israel tried to, again, through their psychological terrorism campaign, tried to tell them, oh, do you regret doing this and that? Because some of them killed Israeli terrorists before. Do you regret? Do you not regret? And they told them, no, we don't regret anything. And if we would go back, we would do the same thing. They told the Israeli wardens there that. And many of them, when they came out, and I heard many interviews. These people, listen, they're full of belief, these people. Some of them were in solitary confinement for 14 years. They didn't see the sun for 14 years. Do you understand what that is? and yet they survived. How? You need to be a person who has a lot of faith and belief and, you know, routine, and you can sustain these harsh conditions. They're not just going to go out and say, you know. Plus, if they wanted to go to the opposite side, they would have had options, by the way. They'll tell Israel, for example, release me and I'll start saying good things about you. Then Israel will show them as heroes who repented, for example. So all of them did, most of them did. Some of them, of course, didn't because they want to protect themselves. And there would be certain conditions, by the way, with their release. For example, they shouldn't be participating in something against the country and stuff like that. If they're released also to the West Bank or even Gaza, some of them who went abroad, they'd have different sets of conditions as well. Devil Chaser Mahmoud, I'm sure you heard about the annexation took place in the West Bank. What's your opinion on what might the US say will do anything? And if he does, do you think Trump will be assassinated? Well, number one, what people probably don't really get is that vote that passed in the Israeli Knesset is an initial vote. There needs to be another vote. The likelihood of that passing in the next vote before an actual implementation, although this is symbolic so far, it's not likely to pass. However, if the United States is outright saying there will be no annexation of the West Bank, what can Israel do with anything? But I find the argument a little bit, you know, unsubstantiated anyway. Like, what do they mean by saying annex the West Bank? Of course, they're saying officially make it part of Israel. But let's look on the ground for a second. Ever since they had the Oslo Accords with the PLO, they have tenfolded their presence and their territories in the West Bank. So although they don't technically belong to the state of Israel by law, they are de facto under the control of Israel. As a matter of fact, every Palestinian place, every village is de facto under Israeli control. The Palestinian Authority in the West Bank is nothing but a puppet regime over there that doesn't represent the people and that works on behalf of Israel in those areas. So even if they don't get this official recognition, Israel is de facto on the ground expanding and is still there, which again is a massive problem for a formation even of a temporary two-state solution, like a temporary small Palestinian state. So it's going to be very problematic to do anything with them. Isn't it likely that Israel is exaggerating the number of squatters it has in the West Bank? Not really. I mean, you can see from the population, from the number of voters, from the representation in the Israeli institutions and the Israeli Knesset, there are these numbers over there. Of course, it might not be the exact number, but there's absolutely a huge number of them, and they constantly expand. And mind you, they attract sometimes people from 1948 occupied territories because they have better financial conditions in those areas, state support too, and also international support. Like many of the charities, this whole is so corrupt. This whole thing is a scam. You know, many of the charities that operate are operating from the United States to channel all of that money for the West Bank. Why do some of them offer ridiculous amounts of money for Palestinians to sell in an attempt to do that instead of direct annexation, 10 and 20 million? And the Palestinians, most of them still refuse, but some of the corrupt ones would sell. And some of them are linked with the authority. It's because they have deep pockets. Where is that money coming from? Most of it is coming from the United States of America. Israeli lobby, some of the Jewish Zionist organizations, some of the Christian Zionist organizations in the United States too. Glenn, thank you very much, my friend, for your super, much appreciated. Let's go to your next input. And again, welcome everyone to another live stream. Sherelle, thank you as well. Thank you very much for your super. Hey, Mama, thank you for your work. Much appreciated, my friend. Black American, power to you, brother. And always recommend your channel to people who want to follow geopolitics. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that, brother. And hopefully it will expand further and further. Thank you so much. I'm sure, my buddy, listen, who anyone with an ounce of the human dignity does, right? Who doesn't? I was from Sherelle. And greetings to everyone in America. I see some people from Ireland too. And all across the world, thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, England and our moderator, Violet from Brighton. Let's have a look. Where did we reach? Iceland. Iceland. I'd love to visit Iceland one day. Must be very peaceful. Gulliburg. The peaceful in Iceland. And Khalid, thank you very much. Diane, thank you very much for your support, Khalid. Much appreciated. Also, Diane is from Canada, and Bindi Boxer is from North Carolina and Australia. Welcome, 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 everyone. And Norway. Norway is also very beautiful. Norway is amazing. Rizwana, could you please share your views on the situation today? Absolutely. I mean, it's horrific. And unfortunately, the fact that it's not getting the coverage it should, simply because of the powers behind it, is reprehensible. And the harsh truth is, Sudan is a prime example of how some of the Arab states and some of the Muslim states, they have the capacity to take action. But who do they decide to take action against? Other Arab and Muslim countries. For the sake of who and why? Well, the same people that we're talking about, isn't it? And now there are even threats against Yemen as well. Yemen, that same country that had this barbaric war imposed against it. And then you would see, again, some of the Arab countries recruiting, because it's another Arab country. But when Israel butchers children live, they will condemn. And they will say, you know, we can't fight. You know, we don't have the capacity to fight. And, you know, pray for them, you know. But don't even pray for all of them. And then now you have some people in Egypt, some of these so-called media personalities saying, don't send charity to Gaza. Don't send charity to Gaza. Imagine that. Imagine the mentality and the sickness of people who are like that. And then like the same mentality with Sudan. And they'll justify everything against them. Whether it's intervention, whether it's a war, whether we send forces. David Nathan, or DRC, absolutely, the Democratic Republic of Congo. and many parts of Central Africa. Africa is one of the least spoken about continents on earth, despite the fact that you have modern slavery by global corporations. Children going there digging for precious metals so that you can use your phone. But they wouldn't talk about them. Why? Because they need to protect their humanitarian image. You know, we are the humanitarian people. We are the enlightened ones. And we support human rights and, you know, and everyone. But slavery and, you know, poisoning in Africa and sending their contaminated recycling to multiple parts of Africa, I'm not going to tell you about that. Dumping it in the sea, right? Do you remember when there were incidents with Sudan too, Somalia? And there was all of this talk about the pirates and piracy and what have you. They were dumping contaminated products in those areas next to Somalia. That's what they were doing. And they do the same in multiple African countries too. And when they send recycling, let's talk about the United States. When they send recycling, by the way, they used to send a lot of it to China. China are very effective with recycling. Up until Trump, and that was, I believe, in his previous term too, started to be very arrogant with them. China told them, you know what, we're not going to recycle your stuff. What did the United States do? They started burning again, contaminating Americans. Unbelievable, unreal. And John Liv is from the US, and also Zobo Custom from Connecticut. A lot from America. Welcome, welcome everyone. And Mike, Virginia. And Wesley, California. All across the world. And Myra from South Africa. And Vertex from Costa Rica. And Lee from Liverpool. Welcome, my friend. Okay. Okay, let's see if we have anything else before we wrap up. And welcome again, everyone. I see many of you sending also other parts of the world as well. Welcome, everyone. Susie saying, you joke about the psychopaths going to an island and continuing their barbarism. They're doing that in Thailand. I heard they're doing something similar in Cyprus too. They're already creating certain communities in those areas. And that's going to be a reality in certain areas. And also, don't be surprised if some of them will change their identities or go back to their original names, because many of them change their names, right? And the easiest bit is just to go out and change your name to something else and continue, or accept the fact that that's it. In a long-term solution, you are equal in front of the law and the state with the other people in the area. I mean, I'm not sure how is it normal that we're talking about this in 2025. How long have they been preaching to us about human rights and equal rights and equality and equality and equal rights and humanitarian? Said, do you think the Russia-Ukraine war will end? Yes, when the project behind it ends. You know, there are many things behind this war happening there. A lot of money, a lot of laundering, potentially human trafficking too. Not the front that they're showing you, and this artificially generated sympathy. But again, like others, it's gonna have to end because they can't dig too much with Russia. They're unable to do that. Although Russia's the aim, by the way. They want a puppet regime in Moscow. Russia's rich, big, strategically, and they want global dominance, but they're not going to get it there. And they're talking, but again, you know, the talks are, you know, far from what Trump used to say, you know, he's going to finish the wars in one day. That didn't happen, did it? Noel, thank you very much for your super, much appreciated. Palestinian American here, and appreciation for you. Thank you so much, much appreciation back, and greetings to you and everyone in the States. And yeah, we'll wrap it up here. Okay, guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream. Good to catch up with you live again. Of course, you know, with the live streams and the Q&A, there isn't always time for that to say the least. But when there is time, it's always great to be with the community and chat to you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. And Diane as well, thank you very much. You guys, the People Tribunal was binding, amazing in 3 days of evidence. Oh, if they want to get evidence, they won't stop. Like I said, if you want to even have like a TV series or something, we'll sit from here till the 22nd century. And it wouldn't be enough. I mean, they stretched Dallas for how long? Was it 20 or 30? How long did Dallas stretch for? Imagine you want to do something really about Gaza. You wouldn't stop. It would be like the ongoing thing from here up until the end. Thank you so much, Diane, everyone else. Guys, I'll hopefully, again, like I told you, I had another video that will either be out tonight or tomorrow during the day. Tomorrow we'll, again, either have a live stream or a video too. Thank you so much for everyone who participated in the chat and who participated and shared their views as well. Anyone who sent supers, Diane, Khalid, Sherelle, Glenn, Michael, Marvin, Lovater, and Nawal, thank you very much for that. So enjoy the rest of your evening, guys, or day or night, depending on where you are. Stay blessed, everyone. Take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.